The phone shattered the silence at 2:17 a.m., a piercing buzz that yanked Andrew Grayson from a jet-lagged haze. His wife's name, Caitlin, glowed on the screen, and a chill ran through him. FaceTime at this hour meant trouble. In a Seattle hotel room, 3,000 miles from their Miami Beach house, he answered, and the image that flared to life burned itself into his mind. Caitlin stood on their deck, bathed in the golden glow of sunset, a champagne flute in her hand and a smirk curling her lips. The ocean sparkled behind her, a cruel reminder of the house he'd bought her a decade ago when she'd whispered, "This place makes me feel alive." Now her eyes glinted with something else, defiance, maybe victory. A man's laugh, deep and too close, cut through the call. An arm, tanned and muscled, swept briefly into the frame before vanishing. Caitlin didn't flinch. "I sold it, Andrew," she said, raising her glass in a mock toast. "Nathan and I are starting fresh. I didn't sign up for a life of your endless meetings and empty promises." Her voice was steady, rehearsed, like she'd practiced this betrayal in front of a mirror. Andrew blinked, his face a mask of calm. The room was stifling, the hotel duvet clinging to his skin, but his mind was already sharpening, cutting through the fog of shock. "Okay," he said. One word, flat and final, before he ended the call. Caitlin had expected a fight, screams, pleas, maybe tears. She'd always known how to push his buttons, how to make him unravel. But Andrew wasn't the man she thought she'd married anymore. He wasn't the soft-spoken architect who'd once asked her opinion on couch fabrics. He was the man who'd built a real estate empire across 2 coasts, who could spot a contract's loophole faster than most lawyers, and whose memory trapped every lie like a steel vault. Caitlin had forgotten that, and it was about to cost her. He sat up, poured a glass of water from the bedside table, and opened his laptop. The hum of the city outside faded as his fingers moved with purpose, logging into a secure VPN. Silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Cold, precise, and terrifyingly clear. While Caitlin toasted her so-called freedom on a deck he'd paid for, Andrew was already pulling the threads of their shared empire apart. The beach house wasn't just a home. It was owned by a joint LLC, a tax-smart move he'd set up years ago when Caitlin still cared about their future together. As co-manager, she had enough access to sell it without his signature. A detail he'd overlooked, a rare misstep. But Caitlin had made a bigger mistake. She hadn't covered her tracks. Andrew's first call was to Ryan, his attorney, a man who could unravel a deal faster than most could read one. "Ryan," Andrew said, his voice steady despite the hour. "Check if Caitlin's moved on the Miami property. I have a feeling she's already started." "On it," Ryan replied, his tone clipped. "Something weird hit escrow this morning. I'll dig." The second call went to Rachel, a forensic accountant whose sharp eyes had once caught a 6-figure error in a report 3 audits had missed. "Rachel, I need you to trace any new accounts under Caitlin's maiden name. She's not as clever as she thinks." "Got it," Rachel said. "Give me 12 hours. If she's moved money, I'll find it." Andrew leaned back, the laptop's glow casting shadows across the room. Caitlin thought she'd outplayed him, that she could sell their past and walk away with a new life. She didn't know he'd spent years building systems, contracts, clauses, contingencies that didn't rely on trust. Trust was for amateurs. Paper was for winners. By dawn, Rachel had already sent a preliminary report. Caitlin had opened a Wells Fargo account under her maiden name, Caitlin Harper, 3 days after a girl's trip to Santa Fe. The beach house proceeds, high 6 figures, had been wired there, but the transfer was still pending, flagged for verification. Sloppy. Andrew almost smiled. Caitlin hadn't even bothered to use a proxy. Every move she made was a digital footprint, and Rachel was already following the trail. Meanwhile, Caitlin was living her victory lap. Her Instagram story, posted just hours after the call, showed her bare feet propped on the deck railing, a glass of rose in hand. The caption read, New chapter. Unapologetically me. Her yoga friends flooded the comments with heart eyes emojis and clapping hands. She hadn't blocked him yet. Andrew watched the post with the same detached curiosity he'd give a quarterly earnings report. Mildly interesting, utterly predictable. But predictability was a weakness, and Caitlin was bleeding it. Andrew's mind raced through the next steps. The LLC paperwork, the escrow discrepancies, the broker who'd facilitated the sale. Someone had looked the other way, and he'd find out who'd dared. The broker, a woman named Laura Kane, had once hosted them at a 4th of July party, serving overpriced crab cakes and joking that Caitlin deserved a real home. Laura's perfume had smelled like cheap wine, but her deals were anything but cheap. She'd helped them buy the house. Now it seemed she'd helped Caitlin sell it. Andrew's phone buzzed again. "Ryan, you were right," he said. "The sale went through Laura's firm. Caitlin used her co-manager status. But there's a problem. The buyer's lawyer flagged a missing document, a consent form from you. It's a clerical error on their end, but it's enough to stall the transfer." "Stall it," Andrew said, "and make sure it doesn't clear until we've got everything." He hung up and stared at the city skyline, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Caitlin thought she'd won because she'd moved first. She didn't realize the game had barely started. Every contract she'd signed, every dollar she'd touched, was a thread in a web Andrew had spent years weaving. And now she was caught in it. The next move came faster than he'd expected. A text from an unexpected source. "Lisa, Caitlin's younger sister. We need to talk. I saw something you should know." Andrew's pulse quickened, but his face stayed still. Lisa had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed out of their drama. If she was reaching out now, it meant Caitlin's house of cards was shakier than even he'd thought. He typed back, "Name the time." Then he closed his laptop and drained the glass. The water was cold, but his resolve was colder. Caitlin had lit the match, but Andrew was about to burn her world to the ground. Legally, quietly, and without a single shout. The text from Lisa hit like a rogue wave, sharp and unexpected. "Meet me at Pike Place, 8 a.m. She's not who you think." Andrew Grayson's pulse spiked, but his face stayed stone cold, betraying nothing. In his Seattle hotel room, the dawn light crept through the blinds, and he was already mapping the next move in a game Caitlin thought she'd won. He arrived at Pike Place Market early, the air thick with the scent of coffee and fresh fish. Lisa was there, tucked into a corner booth at a cafe, her hands fidgeting around a latte. She looked older than he remembered, her eyes heavy with something more than sleeplessness. Guilt, maybe, or resolve. Andrew slid into the seat across from her, his expression unreadable. "She's lying to everyone, Andrew," Lisa said, her voice low, barely above the hum of the morning crowd. "Not just you. I heard her at a bar in Miami, bragging to Nathan about how she timed the sale while you were gone. Said you'd never fight back, that you're too busy building skyscrapers to notice." Andrew leaned back, his fingers tracing the edge of his coffee cup. "What else?" His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a man who didn't ask twice. Lisa hesitated, then slid a folded napkin across the table. She wrote this down drunk, laughing like it was a game. It's the name of the account where she sent the money. Harper Ventures. She thought it was clever, using her maiden name. Lisa's jaw tightened. "She didn't just betray you. She's been planning this for months. Maybe longer." The napkin felt heavier than it should have. A flimsy piece of paper holding the first crack in Caitlin's armor. Andrew tucked it into his pocket without looking at it. "Why now?" he asked. "You've never gotten involved before." Lisa's eyes dropped to her cup. "Because she promised me she'd changed. After Mom died, she swore she'd stop using people. I believed her. Then I saw her with Nathan, acting like you were just collateral damage." She looked up, her voice harder. "I'm done protecting her." Andrew nodded once, the gesture sharp and final. He didn't need to thank her. The weight of her choice was enough. As he left the cafe, the market buzzed around him. Vendors shouting, tourists snapping photos, but his mind was elsewhere, piecing together the puzzle Lisa had just handed him. Back in his room, he called Rachel, the forensic accountant whose mind worked like a scalpel. Harper Ventures, he said, reading the name from the napkin. Check it. Cross-reference it with Caitlin's maiden name and any LLCs filed in Florida or Nevada. Already on it, Rachel replied, her keyboard clicking in the background. I've got something else. The broker, Laura Kane? Her assistant sent an email to Caitlin's private Gmail, confirming the sale. Problem is, Laura's signature's on a document missing your consent. That's a felony if we push it. Push it, Andrew said, and find out who Nathan is. He's not just a gym rat. Rachel's voice sharpened. Way ahead of you. Nathan Vance runs a fitness brand, VibeFit, but it's a front. Shell companies, wire transfers, no real revenue. He's using Caitlin's money to clean his own. She's in deeper than she knows. Andrew's jaw clenched, but his mind was racing. Caitlin wasn't just a traitor. She was a pawn in a bigger scheme. Nathan had played her, and she'd been too blinded by her own ego to see it. The thought didn't bring pity, only clarity. Every misstep she made was another lever he could pull. By noon, Ryan, his attorney, had more. The buyer's lawyer is spooked, he said. That missing consent form? They're calling it a clerical error, but I've got a judge ready to issue a stop order on the transfer. The funds are still in escrow, frozen until we say otherwise. Make it official, Andrew said, and get me everything on Laura Kane's firm. If she's cutting corners for Caitlin, she's done it before. He hung up and opened his laptop, pulling up Caitlin's Instagram. Another post, this time from a sleek Miami condo. She stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, Nathan's arm around her waist, the city glittering behind them. New view, new life, the caption read. Andrew's lips twitched, not quite a smile. She was celebrating a victory that didn't exist. The truth was, Caitlin's world was already crumbling. Rachel's next email confirmed it. Harper Ventures was a ghost LLC, filed in Nevada with a fake address but Caitlin's real phone number as the contact. The account held the beach house proceeds, but the transfer was stalled, flagged by the bank for irregular activity. Caitlin hadn't even checked. She was too busy posing for her followers, oblivious to the noose tightening around her. Andrew's phone buzzed again. Lisa, this time with a voice message. I found something else, she said, her voice shaky. Caitlin's been emailing Laura about another property, a condo in her name only. She's trying to flip it before you get back. I've got screenshots. Want me to send them? He texted back. Send them. Now. The screenshots arrived seconds later, a chain of emails between Caitlin and Laura, timestamped 2 days before the FaceTime call. Caitlin's words were brazen. He's in Seattle. He won't care. Just get it done. Laura's reply was a single line. Consider it handled. Andrew forwarded the emails to Rachel and Ryan, his fingers moving with the precision of a surgeon. Caitlin thought she was playing chess, but she was barely managing checkers. Every move she made left a trail, and Andrew was collecting them all. That night, he sat in a rooftop bar overlooking Puget Sound, the city's lights reflecting off the water like a mirror of his thoughts. A glass of bourbon sat untouched in front of him, the amber liquid catching the glow of his laptop screen. Page 47 of Rachel's report. A ledger showing the escrow hold, the funds still in limbo. Page 62. Laura's digital signature on a forged consent form. Page 89. Nathan's VibeFit linked to 3 offshore accounts, all under investigation by the IRS. Andrew sipped the bourbon, the burn grounding him. Caitlin had mistaken his silence for weakness, his distance for defeat. She didn't know that silence was his sharpest weapon, honed over years of deals and betrayals. He didn't need to shout or beg. He had paper, proof, and a plan. Lisa's betrayal of her sister was the wild card he hadn't expected, but it fit perfectly. Caitlin had built her new life on lies, and now her own family was tearing it down. Andrew typed a single word to Rachel, green. Her reply was instant. Filing tomorrow. Meet you in Miami. He closed the laptop and looked out at the city, its pulse steady and unrelenting. Caitlin thought she'd rewritten their story, but she'd only handed him the pen. The beach house was just the beginning. By the time she realized she'd lost, Andrew would already be 3 moves ahead. Caitlin's latest Instagram post was a masterpiece of delusion. Her silhouette against a Miami sunrise, Nathan's hand resting on her shoulder, captioned, "Chasing dreams, not regrets." Andrew Grayson stared at it from a Seattle rooftop bar, the city's skyline glittering like a chessboard he was about to dominate. She thought she was untouchable, but her every move was a misstep, and Andrew was closing in. The bourbon in his glass caught the light, untouched as he scrolled through Rachel's latest report. Harper Ventures, Caitlin's Ghost LLC, was a house of cards, filed with a fake Nevada address and her real phone number, as if she dared the world to catch her. The beach house proceeds, nearly $1 million, sat frozen in escrow, flagged by the bank for suspicious activity. Rachel had traced the wire attempt to a condo lease in downtown Miami, signed under Caitlin's maiden name. Sloppy didn't begin to cover it. His phone buzzed. Lisa again, this time with a forwarded email chain. Screenshots of Caitlin's correspondence with Laura Kane, the broker who'd greased the sale. One line from Caitlin stood out, bold and reckless. "He's too busy in Seattle to notice. Just make it quick." Laura's reply was curt. "Done. Funds clear by Friday." Except they hadn't. Andrew had seen to that. He texted Rachel. "Escrow hold still active?" Her reply was instant. "Lock tight. Buyer's lawyer is panicking. Laura's firm is under review." Andrew's lips twitched, the closest he'd come to a smile in days. Caitlin was dancing on a stage that was already collapsing. Back in Miami, Caitlin was oblivious, her confidence a fragile shell. She posted another story. A selfie in a sleek gym, Nathan spotting her on a weight bench, her smile wide and performative. "New strength, new me," she wrote. Andrew watched it with the detachment of a predator sizing up prey. Nathan wasn't just her lover. He was a con man, and Rachel's digging had uncovered the dirt. VibeFit, his fitness brand, was a front for laundering money through shell companies. Caitlin's funds were his latest wash cycle, and she was too smitten to see it. Andrew's next call was to Ryan, his attorney, whose voice crackled with urgency. "We've got Laura dead to rights," Ryan said. "Her firm backdated a consent form with your initials. Forged, obviously. It's fraud, plain and simple. I've got a meeting with the buyer's legal team tomorrow. They're ready to void the sale." "Do it," Andrew said, "and file a complaint against Laura's license. She's not walking away clean." Ryan paused. "There's more. The IRS is sniffing around Harper Ventures. Caitlin used her social security number on the LLC filing. They're calling it potential tax evasion. If we push, this could go federal." Andrew's mind raced. Federal meant consequences Caitlin couldn't charm her way out of. "Hold off," he said. "Let her dig deeper first." He wanted her to feel the walls closing in, to taste her own arrogance before the fall. The wild card was Lisa. Her betrayal of Caitlin was a gift Andrew hadn't anticipated, but it came with questions. Why risk her sister's wrath? Lisa's email had hinted at a deeper motive. "She promised me she'd stop using people after Mom died." Andrew filed that away, a piece of the puzzle he'd unravel later. For now, her screenshots were gold, proof of Caitlin's intent, time-stamped and undeniable. He leaned back, the bar's jazz hum blending with the city's pulse. Caitlin thought she was rewriting her life, but she was starring in a script Andrew was directing. Every email, every post, every dollar she touched was a thread in his web, and she was tangled deeper than she knew. Then came the curveball. Rachel called, her voice tighter than usual. "Nathan's not just a small-time hustler," she said. "I cross-referenced his accounts with a federal database. He's linked to a money laundering ring under FBI watch." Caitlin's transfers tripped their radar. They're building a case, and her name's in the mix. Andrew's grip on the phone tightened. "How deep is she in?" "Deep enough," Rachel said. "She's listed as a co-signer on 2 of his shell accounts. If the feds move, she's not just losing the money. She's looking at charges." The news hit like a spark on dry tinder. Caitlin wasn't just betraying him. She was wading into a criminal swamp, blind to the alligators. Andrew didn't feel triumph, only focus. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about precision, about making her face the consequences she'd invited. He stood, leaving the bourbon untouched, and stepped to the edge of the rooftop. Seattle sprawled below, relentless and indifferent, a city that rewarded those who played smart. Caitlin had played reckless, and now her empire of lies was crumbling. Andrew texted Lisa, "Anything else from the bar?" Her reply came fast. She mentioned a second deal. "Another property. I'm trying to get details." Andrew's eyes narrowed. Caitlin wasn't just running. She was doubling down. He forwarded the text to Rachel with one instruction: "Find it." Then he dialed Ryan again. "Get me a meeting with the buyer's lawyer. I'm flying to Miami tomorrow." The game was shifting, and Andrew was ready to raise the stakes. Caitlin thought she'd outsmarted him, but she'd forgotten who she was playing against. He wasn't the man who'd bought her that beach house to heal her wounds. He was the man who could dismantle her world without raising his voice. As his plane touched down in Miami the next morning, Andrew's phone lit up with another Instagram notification. Caitlin, now in a designer sundress, stood on a balcony overlooking the ocean. "Freedom tastes better than I imagined," she wrote. Andrew didn't react. He didn't need to. The email from Rachel was already open on his screen. A title deed for a condo, purchased in Caitlin's name, funded by a second wire from Harper Ventures. Another secret, another mistake. He stepped off the plane, the Miami heat hitting like a warning. Caitlin was still posting, still posing, still believing she'd won. But the cracks in her facade were spreading, and Andrew was about to pry them wide open. Caitlin's confidence was a house built on sand, and Andrew Grayson was about to unleash the tide. Her latest Instagram post, her laughing on a yacht, Nathan's arms slung around her, captioned "Living My Truth," was a taunt, a flare shot into a sky Andrew controlled. In his Miami hotel suite, the ocean view mocked her bravado as he reviewed Rachel's latest bombshell. Caitlin had tried to flip a second property, a downtown condo, using funds siphoned from their joint LLC. She wasn't just reckless. She was desperate. The email from Rachel was surgical, each line a scalpel. The condo, purchased under Harper Ventures, was funded by a wire transfer that never cleared, caught in the same escrow trap as the beach house proceeds. Caitlin's name was on every document, her signatures, some forged, some real, tying her to a web of fraud. But the real kicker was Nathan. Rachel's digging had linked his VibeFit brand to a federal investigation, with Caitlin's accounts flagged as conduits for his dirty money. She wasn't just a betrayer. She was an unwitting accomplice in a criminal scheme. Andrew's phone buzzed. "Lisa." Again, her voice message trembling with urgency. "I got the details on the condo deal," she said. "Caitlin met Laura Kane at a cafe last week. I overheard them. Laura promised to rush the sale, no questions asked. I recorded it." Attached was an audio file, 30 seconds of Caitlin's voice, smug and careless. Andrew's too distracted to notice. "Just make it fast, Laura." Andrew forwarded it to Rachel with one word: gold. He leaned back, the sweet, sleek lines mirroring his clarity. Caitlin thought she was playing a solo game, but every move she made was a gift to his strategy. The beach house sale was voided that morning. Ryan had secured a court order reversing the transaction due to the forged consent form. The buyer, spooked by the fraud, had cut ties with Laura's firm and was now suing her for malpractice. The proceeds, still frozen, were out of Caitlin's reach, and the IRS was circling, alerted by the mismatched identifiers on her LLC filings. But Andrew wasn't done. He dialed Ryan. "The condo deal? Can we block it?" "Already in motion," Ryan said. The title company flagged it for incomplete paperwork. Caitlin used the same LLC, Harper Ventures. It's a dead end for her. I've also got a meeting with the state licensing board about Laura. Her career's toast. Andrew nodded, his mind shifting to Nathan. Rachel's earlier call had painted a grim picture. Nathan's shell companies were under FBI scrutiny, and Caitlin's transfers had drawn their attention. She was a co-signer on accounts tied to money laundering, her name a blinking red light in a federal database. Andrew didn't need to push the feds. He just needed to let Caitlin's own actions bury her. The next piece fell into place at noon. Lisa texted, "Caitlin's freaking out. She called me, saying the bank's asking questions about her account. She thinks it's a glitch." Andrew almost laughed. A glitch. Caitlin's world was unraveling, and she was blaming software. He replied, "Keep her talking. Get more." Lisa's response was a single emoji. By evening, Andrew was back in their Miami Beach house, the one Caitlin had tried to sell out from under him. The air smelled of salt and betrayal, the deck still bearing the ghost of her champagne toast. He stood where she'd stood during that FaceTime call, the memory fueling his resolve. Rachel joined him, her briefcase a weapon of precision. She laid out 3 folders on the dining table, each one a nail in Caitlin's coffin. "This," Rachel said, tapping the first, "is the escrow audit. Every transfer Caitlin attempted, flagged and frozen. This one's the condo paperwork, her signatures on a forged addendum, claiming sole ownership. And this," she opened the third, "is Nathan's financial trail. His accounts link to a dozen shell LLCs, and Caitlin's name is on 2. The feds are already watching." Andrew's eyes scanned the pages, each number and timestamp a bullet. "What's the timeline?" Rachel adjusted her glasses. "The feds could move in weeks, maybe days. Caitlin's exposure is total fraud, concealment, and potential money laundering. Laura's firm is cooperating to save themselves, throwing her under the bus." He nodded, the plan crystallizing. Caitlin wasn't just losing the house or the money. She was losing her freedom, and she still didn't see it coming. That night, Caitlin posted again. A solo shot in her condo, her smile strained, caption "Storms pass." Andrew watched it from the beach house, the irony bitter. She was drowning, and her followers were still clapping. He texted Lisa, "Anything new?" Her reply was immediate. "She's meeting Nathan tomorrow at the gym." Sounded panicked. "I'll try to listen in." The next morning, Andrew met Ryan at a law firm downtown, the glass-walled office a stark contrast to the chaos Caitlin was about to face. The buyer's lawyer was there, a wiry man with a nervous tic. "We've rescinded the sale," he said. "Your wife's broker misled us. We're pursuing damages against Laura Kane's firm." "Good," Andrew said. "And the funds?" "Returned to the LLC's account." Ryan cut in. "Under your control. Caitlin's got nothing." Andrew's phone vibrated. Lisa, with another voice message. "I followed her to the gym," she whispered. "Nathan's telling her to move the money offshore. Fast." She's scared, Andrew. She knows something's wrong. The audio cut to Caitlin's voice, frantic. "The bank's not answering. What did you do, Nathan?" Nathan's reply was cold. "Just do what I say, or we're both screwed." Andrew forwarded it to Rachel, his pulse steady. Caitlin was cracking, and Nathan was pushing her deeper into the mire. He didn't need to confront her. Not yet. The trap was set, and she was walking right into it. As he left the meeting, the Miami sun burned high, relentless. Caitlin thought she'd escaped, but she'd only traded one cage for another. Andrew was flying back to the beach house, not to gloat, but to wait. The feds were closing in, Lisa was feeding him intel, and Rachel's files were a ticking bomb. Caitlin's next post, her next lie, her next desperate move. It didn't matter. She'd already lost. Caitlin's final Instagram post was a desperate act of defiance. Her standing alone in her Miami condo, eyes shadowed, captioned, "I choose me." But Andrew Grayson knew the truth. She'd chosen a lie, and now the consequences were crashing down. In the beach house he'd reclaimed, the ocean's roar outside was a fitting soundtrack to the endgame he'd orchestrated with surgical precision. The morning sun poured through the windows as Andrew sat at the dining table. Rachel's files spread before him like a battle map. The beach house sale was officially voided, the funds restored to the LLC under his sole control. Caitlin's condo deal had collapsed, the title company refusing to proceed after Rachel exposed the forged paperwork. Harper Ventures, Caitlin's ghost LLC, was a federal target, its accounts frozen and linked to Nathan's money laundering scheme. The IRS had opened an investigation, and the FBI was circling, with Caitlin's name on their radar as a co-conspirator. Rachel stood across from him, her voice steady as she laid out the final pieces. "Laura Kane's firm is done," she said, sliding a document forward. "They're settling with the buyer to avoid a lawsuit, and Laura's license is under review. She's already turned on Caitlin, handing over emails to save herself." Rachel tapped another folder. "And Nathan? He's in custody. Picked up last night on wire fraud charges. He's talking Andrew. Caitlin's name is all over his statements." Andrew's eyes flicked to the page, a transcript of Nathan's interrogation. One line stood out. "She thought she was running the show, but I needed her accounts to move the money." Caitlin had been played, her betrayal a mere footnote in Nathan's larger game. Andrew felt no pity, only the cold satisfaction of a plan executed flawlessly. Lisa's role had been the clincher. Her final text arrived an hour ago. "She called me crying. Said the bank's seizing her account. She knows it's over." Attached was a recording, Caitlin's voice broken. "Lisa, I messed up. I thought Nathan loved me. What do I do?" Lisa's reply was ice. "You did this to yourself." Andrew saved the file, another piece of evidence he didn't need but would keep. He stood and walked to the deck, the same spot where Caitlin had toasted her freedom weeks ago. The memory of her smirk, her champagne flute, her careless laugh fueled his resolve. She'd thought she could erase their life, sell his legacy, and walk away with a new one. But she'd underestimated him, mistaking his silence for surrender. The doorbell rang, sharp and inevitable. Andrew opened it to find Agent Connor Lewis, FBI, badge in hand, his face all business. "Mr. Grayson," Lewis said, stepping inside. "We need to talk about your wife." "She's not my wife anymore," Andrew corrected, his tone flat. "What do you need?" Lewis glanced at Rachel, who nodded, her briefcase already open. "Caitlin Harper's accounts are tied to Nathan Vance's operation," he said. "We've got her on fraud, concealment, and potential money laundering. She's not the mastermind, but she's complicit. We're serving her a summons today." Andrew's expression didn't waver. "She made her choices." Lewis raised an eyebrow. "You're not pressing charges?" "I don't need to," Andrew said, gesturing to the files. "You've got everything." The agent nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "We'll take it from here." As Lewis left, Rachel closed her briefcase with a click. "She's done, Andrew. No money, no condo, no way out. The feds will handle the rest." Andrew didn't respond. He didn't need to. The house was his again, the LLC secure, his empire intact. Caitlin's world, built on lies and Instagram filters, had crumbled under the weight of her own greed. Later that day, he drove to the condo Caitlin had leased, the glass tower gleaming in the Miami heat. She was there, sitting in the lobby, surrounded by boxes, her belongings, evicted after the bank seized her account. She looked up as he approached, her face pale, eyes red. For a moment, she seemed ready to plead, to pull the old Caitlin charm. Andrew, she whispered, voice cracking, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted freedom. He cut in, his voice low, unyielding. You got it. No house, no money, no lies to hide behind. You're free now. She flinched, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. We can fix this. We loved each other once. Andrew's gaze was steel. I loved you. You loved what I could give you. That's gone. He turned and walked away, her soft sob fading behind him. There was no need for a scene, no need for shouts. The files, the law, the truth had done the work. Caitlin had lit the match, but Andrew had let her burn. Back at the beach house, he stood on the deck, the ocean stretching endless before him. His phone buzzed, Lisa, with a final message. She's moving to her friend's place. She asked about you. I didn't answer. Andrew deleted the text. Lisa had chosen truth over loyalty, and that was enough. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold and fire. Andrew didn't post about it, didn't need to. Caitlin's last post was still up. Her hollow I choose me a digital epitaph for a life she'd thrown away. She'd faced the feds, the courts, the wreckage of her choices. Andrew didn't need to watch. He'd already won. He stepped inside, the door closing with a quiet thud. The house was his, not just in deed but in spirit, a monument to what he'd built and reclaimed. Caitlin had wanted a new chapter, but she'd written her own ending. And Andrew? He was already turning the page.